Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So yes, good morning everyone. Thanks for joining. Maybe we are in session number 5. Okay, so maybe let's just go through a bit of a recap of what we did in the earlier session, and maybe then we'll just here in case there are any doubts, queries, and maybe then we'll just get started with the new topics. Okay, so in the last session, what we understood is that while we are designing any RAP application, the things which are quite important, or I can say the thing which build the base for my RAP application is the CDS data modeling. As a part of that CDS data modeling, we understood interface view, R view, and the consumption view. Now, on the R view and consumption view, which are application specific view, or I can say service specific view, we define our behaviors. On R view, we define behavior definition, and on consumption view, we define behavior projection. We also understood that on this definition and projection, we ideally have the capabilities. So for example, we define a create, update, delete capability. We also enable draft capabilities. So we had certain auto-generated draft actions as well. We also define some sort of a determinations, which means that if based on some life cycle of an application, based on some update, some alteration of some existing field, we would like to have an impact on any other field, we can also have some determination in place. So we also understood how we can implement the determination. At the same point in time, if we have to do any sort of a mapping while our REST API calls are being triggered, we can also use the mapping keyword. And the side effect also something we understood, which work ideally in conjunction of a determination. As in, for example, if I'm setting the initial value, or let's just say on change of a customer ID, I would like an agency ID to be changed. Without manual refresh, the data may not get reflected onto the UI because system would have updated the data into underlying draft table, but may not have shown onto UI because UI would not have triggered an explicit get call. In order for it to start appearing onto the UI, we wrote some sort of a side effect. Okay. So when it comes to side effect and determination, a simple question you might encounter in any of the interviews which you might uh, be giving. Idea is that determination and side effects, so are they alternatives to each other? So they are not, right? They are not alternatives. They are complementing each other. Determination's purpose is to update something onto the draft layer, or I can say in your buffer, whereas your purpose of your side effect is to ensure that those determined data start reflecting onto UI immediately without my user doing a manual refresh. Okay, that's the idea. So if I just simply go with, for example, the set initial value, maybe in this one, what you would have seen that we are trying to set some initial value to my application. For example, when my application starts, I would like to show the start date as a current date. So in that case, we understood some sort of a EML, entity manipulation language, using which I can manipulate, or I can say I can work with the data. Okay, so what we did is we wrote a modify entities of the name of your root entity in local mode because we are in the context of a BO. Which entity we are working on? I can say travel. We are trying to update the field. It's kind of a begin date, and which particular record we are supposed to update. So I'll say with value, and whatever key parameter I would have received into the input, I can say this key parameter and the new value. For example, for me, the source is the system value. For you, maybe the source could be different. So whatever it is, you have to update it over here. So likewise, you can have a updation, and in case there are some updations, there are some activity that you just got, that you just triggered, is failing because of some reason, you can receive those messages into your LT reported. So for an ABAPA, maybe you can visualize it as of your sub RC is failing and your system message parameter are containing some messages. So likewise over here, LT reported will contain those messages that you can refer to, and you can pass it on to UI as well, so that your UI also shows that messages in case some activity has failed. In case we would like to update one value to another, I can say I can read the buffer value by reading the entities of by using a read EML. After reading the data, I can also plan updating. For example, we tried updating customer ID with the value of an agency ID. You can do that easily by again using the same modify entity statement. So this is how the EML works. We also understood that while we are working on this, we are having a semantic key based object. As we do have a semantic key based object, then the primary key of it, which is for example travel ID or booking ID, how that can be determined. I cannot always depend on my end user to pass those data because he or she may not pass the one which is actually required. In actual business, we do not allow my user to enter the primary key, rather we generate it. Okay. So here, in order for us to do that, we use a keyword called early numbering on my header because we would like to have an early numbering on header. On item as well, we felt a need of having that, so we added a keyword. It's not mandatory for item to have an early numbering if a header has, or vice versa. Independently, each node can have its own decision whether they would like to have an early numbering or not. Okay. So the purpose over here is that at the very early stage of your application, you will get a call over here and you are supposed to determine the maximum travel ID, or I can say whenever whatever is the new applicable number and pass it on to the map parameter. The moment you do that, your system will ultimately add this data quite early into the stage before even the data starts appearing onto your UI. That's why it's called early numbering. So as you can see, the method for header creation and the header for booking creation for numbering are two different methods. So for each of the node, you can expect separate method to be created rather than we writing the code in a single method. Okay, so I can say read entities of, we read the data of an existing booking to see if there are any bookings which are already into buffer. We figured out the new booking number and we passed it on to the map booking. That's how we ultimately decided the new booking number and we are passing it on to the UI. Or I can say we are passing it on to the buffer, which ultimately is reflecting onto the UI. Okay, so this is what we understood, that in your BO, you can have different kind of operations performed. So determination, one of them that we understood. Maybe today we can also start focusing on validations. Anyone has any doubt on any of the things we covered so far, be it last session or any previous session? Anything? Okay, no, I'll take it as a no. Okay, maybe let's just go over here and try to, okay, have a look at the application. Maybe we have to, okay, maybe we have a project in Fiori space. I'll start that so that we can at least have a preview of our application. Now, by the time it starts, let's just understand the thing called validation. Okay, so in our BO, we understood early numbering, right? Now, the other one, I can say the late numbering, oh, might be a bit difficult to read. Okay, so we also understood that we can have some sort of capabilities over here, either a standard operation. Okay, like we have a, okay, we can have either a standard operation or maybe we can have some custom operations. When we talk about a standard operation, we can, what we can have is either a create, update, delete, or maybe some sort of a draft operations as well. When it comes to custom operation, either we can write some sort of a logic to have some values being determined on the runtime depending on the activities which are being performed on application layer, or we can have some activity using which I can validate the data. Okay, or I can call it as a validation. Now, it's quite clear that maybe when we are working with an application, there can be different possibilities, right? So for example, if I just say I'm creating a travel, definitely I can expect my begin date to be a mandatory one. If I consider my end date, that might also be required in order for me to plan my travel correctly, right? Likewise, there can be n number of things that you can decide as per your business logic what can be mandatory, what can be not. So either you can have some sort of a validation which is of type whether a field is mandatory or optional. Another thing could be that if I enter a data into my field, it may or may not be valid depending on the context into which it has been entered. Right. So for example, if I consider begin date, my begin date, let's just say 28th of Jan may be valid, and end date 30th of Jan may also be valid. But if I plan my begin date as a 31st of Jan, then indirectly my end date will become invalid because my end date cannot be before my start date. So end date individually is a correct date in the terms of a data type, but when it comes to the data it is containing, out of the context into which it is, it may be considered as an invalid. Okay, so either we can have some mandatory or optional, or I can say contextual validations also playing some role which decides whether the data that my user has entered are valid or not. You can think of anything. For example, if I am saying I'm choosing a material in my application, but I have entered a company code as well, right? Now, a material XYZ can exist in a material master, but when I enter a company code 1010, does it really exist in a 1010? So if it does not, then material is invalid. Material is valid individually, but when it comes to the context into which we are referring to, it may be invalid. Okay, so these are the different kind of validation you might end up writing depending on your business requirement, right? So how we can ensure that the data which user is entering is valid, and before the data validation is happening even before the data is being persisted in my database. Okay, and for all those things to happen, we have a node called validation. That's what we can refer to. Okay, other custom operation we might also learn maybe in some time is called actions or functions. Okay, so ideally action or function are in terms of OData are nothing but a function imports. If I am performing some action, so for example, I'll just say mark status as completed. My purpose over here is to just update my status to completed, but I am trying to update some data onto my system, so it's considered as an action. And if I'm trying to get some data, so for example, I'll just say get my profile parameter. Okay, then I can consider it as a function. Why I can consider it as a function? Because the underlying call it might trigger in backend is a get call. So it's a function import with the type get, whereas action is a function import with the type post because it tries to update something. Now, just to remind you that these are custom operation. So even though I say that you are supposed to perform in an action something which updates the DB, it may also be possible that you might end up getting something because that's a custom one. So you might not follow the rule, and maybe you might use the function or action in the different, I mean, in a different way compared to what it was actually designed for. Okay, so always try to follow the right thing. So maybe I guess this is something we are going to learn maybe when we go in action and function. But for now, let's just focus on validation. Saying I would like to validate some sort of a data. Okay, so that's what we are going to start with. Okay, so let's just see if my application is up and running yet. Okay, and it seems I have a dev space up and running. Okay. Okay, I'll just try to preview my application here. Right click. Okay, maybe it's adding some sort of extensions. Okay, I'll right click and I'll just try to preview my application. Okay, and maybe let's see how it looks like. Okay, I'll put all of us in a mute mode for now. Okay, maybe I have to open this one. Okay, so I have got certain set of data, right? So let's just try creating a record to view how the things are looking alike. Here I can see determined a number called 4140. Now we know that travel ID is a bit of a mandatory one and there's a primary key. So I can also see the value is already being assigned. I cannot change it. So seems to be a bit valid to me. Agency ID over here seems to be a, I can say a field which is not having any sort of asterisk marks. Or I can say there is no icon over here which says that these are mandatory fields. But that's the same case for everything. So based on your business requirement, you can choose whether you would like to have some data as a mandatory one or optional one. So for example, I would like to have my start date, end date, maybe let's just say the total price and description, okay, as a mandatory field. Okay. So if my business requirement is to have some sort of, let's just say, a validation which force me to have certain sort of a field as a mandatory one, for example, begin date, end date, description. So what I am supposed to do first, there are two steps for any of the validation. Visually, my user should feel as if these fields are mandatory. For example, for start date, I don't have anything different compared to end date. So how my user will feel whether that's a mandatory field or not. Okay, now in order for that to happen, what you can do is like we have had a field control, right? Static field control, which says how a field is going to look alike, whether it's going to be a read only, whether it's going to be a read only update. Same way in a static field control, I can have whether I would like to have some field as a mandatory. So for example, I'll say I would like to have some field as a mandatory. Okay, and this particular mandatory field, which I am saying, maybe I would like to have, let's just say my start date, which is nothing but my begin date. Okay, and maybe let's just say end date, and maybe let's just say description. I would like to have this field as a mandatory. It means whenever a user creates a record, this field should be there, right? So I marked a field as a mandatory. Let's see how it works. I'll just go back and try to refresh my application. just happened. Yeah, now maybe there was some issue while loading the application. I can see that unlike in agency ID and customer ID where there is no sign in start date, end date, now I can see an asterisk sign along with the description. Okay, it means these fields are mandatory, right? Let's just try to do something. So for example, I'll just simply say I have this 234. I'll just press a tab. I had a side effect, so this data got determined. I'll just simply say that, hey, I have a booking fee and maybe total price, and I am just going with some sort of a currency code, and but I won't enter the description and end date. Let's just see how it behaves. I'll try to create my record. You see, even though I marked a field as a mandatory, in start date I had something, but in end date and description I did not have anything. Still, my system allowed me saving that record. Not only in case of a creation, but in the edit as well. If I keep those fields as a blank and if I try to save that, then also system is allowing me to save those records. Okay, it means the field which I am calling out as a mandatory is just for the namesake. As in, if I really look at the behavior of the field, they are not being considered as a mandatory field in reality. Okay, so what we understood from here is when we go with a static field control for mandatory fields, they are just for the right set of a representation. It does not mean that these fields are actually mandatory. They are marked as a mandatory in a field attribute level, but in order for you to actually consider these fields as a mandatory, you have to have some sort of a validation in place which validates whether my field in reality is actually a mandatory one or that's having some sort of a differences. Okay. Now, so what you are supposed to do is whatever you write over here is just a visualization of the field. That's what you are doing. If you are supposed to actually validate the data, you have to create a custom. Like we have a determination, same way you are supposed to create a validation in your behavior. Okay. Now, one thing you would have visualized, and maybe I'll still try to reiterate that, saying this is my behavior projection and this is my behavior definition. In my projection, I just use certain keyword. Okay, for capabilities, I am using a use keyword, but when it comes to a field control, they are not being passed on to the behavior. I am never supposed to pass field control information in my behavior projection. They are auto inherited. Same goes with the, let's just say any determination, and same goes with the validation. Any mapping also you specified. So what all things I'll specify on my behavior projection, any standard operation, custom operations, associations, and side effect, but not a full side effect, just single keyword for that, nothing more than that. So other than this, other informations are not required when it comes to behavior projection. Okay, just to give you an idea. Okay, I'll just go back to what we were discussing. I'll say I would like to create a validation. What I'm supposed to do? I'm willing to perform some sort of a validation. I'll just simply say validation. I would like to validate some sort of a mandatory field. Okay. Now, what I'm supposed to validate? A mandatory field. So my name can be anything. I can do whatever I would like to do inside. Now, at what point in time I would like to validate the data before my data gets saved? So if I say control space, it just gives me one option on save. So I'll just add on save validation, and I'll simply say, hey, I would like to have the records validated during the creation mode and as well as in the updation mode. Saying whenever my record is being created, I would like to validate whether the mandatory fields are there or not. If not, I would like to give some error. Now it might not have find the method. I just try to create that by saying control plus one. Okay, it will add a method for validation. Okay, I found one method over here. I'll put a cursor. What I got is some sort of a key parameter into the input. Okay, it means system knows that, okay, these are the key values. If you would like to read the actual data, start date, end date, description, you won't get it directly. Rather, you have to read the data from buffer. And how I can read that? Simply by using a read EML like we did. Other than that, the changing parameter over here are failed and reported. It means that the messages that you are generating, you are supposed to pass the messages into reported parameter, and the records which are failing, you are supposed to pass those information into a failed parameter of it. Okay, that's what we'll be doing. But I have the skeleton ready. Let me just try to activate both of them for now. So we don't have any logic written as such, but we just created a node. Now what we are going to do in that, maybe that's totally up to us. So in a nutshell, individually, that's of no use till the time we don't write a logic. Let me just do a syntax check again. Now, if I put a cursor, it says that validation is not assigned to any determine action, not even prepare. Now, what does it mean? It means that what you are saying is that validation should validate the record saying mandatory fields are there or not on click of a save. Now, let's just think it from a user perspective. I can have thousands of fields, some on header, some on item, and a whole business document contains lots of information. Now, from a validation perspective, from a consistency perspective, I have to validate the data in order for my user to know that the data he or she is entering is correct or not, right? And if we say that the data he or she is entering is incorrect, he or she should get a chance to correct those. But if there are a bunch of fields, okay, which I mean, there are the number of fields are huge in number. If you only show them whether the data he or she has entered is valid or not, towards really end, towards the, let's just say, final save of the record, maybe he would have started from page number 1, he would be on page number 5, and now you are returning saying, hey, on your page number 1, whatever you had entered was incorrect. That would be quite wrong, right? Because now he has to do all the rework, because he would have entered the data expecting that the data he has entered is correct. Okay. So on save, it makes sense for me to validate the data to ensure that the inconsistent data are not flowing into my system. But before even save, there should be some way for my user to validate the data if he or she needs. Okay. Why I said if he or she needs? Because many a time, right? The way I also mentioned, saying my material over here may be invalid depending on the context. So if I say my material is over here and I will simply say, hey, this material individually does not have any sense, and I'll give an error. But the company code, for example, I'm specifying 1011, and here it really makes sense for this material to be there, then it does not make sense for me to show a error on material before even I enter a company code. So there can be some time when my user says, hey, I am done editing, done entering my record. Can you please now validate? A user can explicitly request for data validation. That's also quite possible. So ideally, when we should trigger a validation, we should trigger a validation ideally in the life cycle, either on click of a save, or another one is whenever my user requests for that. Okay, and whenever my user can, how my user can request for a validation by pressing enter. So if some user press enter, okay, in a Fiori element based application, ideally a action over here, which you see draft determine action prepare, which is there to prepare the validity of the data. It just to prepare the accurate draft result. So if this is being triggered, then your validation and anything that you write within that will get triggered. But in order for it also it to happen, you have to specify during the preparation phase what all things you are supposed to do, what all things you are willing to do. Okay. Now in Fury element, it happens automatically. In a freestyle, it's a UI developer's responsibility. So in case they are working on a draft enabled application and they would like to validate the result beforehand, they can go with a prepare action explicit trigger. The moment they do that, the rest of the things will get triggered. So what does it say? It says validation is not assigned to any action called prepare, because you are not validating the record. If my user asks for, how would you do that? So I'll just simply say I would like to add a bracket over here. And the validation that you just wrote, I'll just simply say this particular validation over here, I am supposed to, or I am willing to, let's just validate it beforehand during preparation phase. So you will just simply say this particular validation, okay, I would like to have triggered. That's what you are saying. Now, the moment you do that, this particular validation is going to get triggered whenever my user requests for a validation over here. That's the idea. Okay, so I'll just activate this. Okay, now we have wrote the logic. We have just created a validation. The logics are yet to be written. Now let's just understand the messages. First thing, the method over here contains an input parameter. In order for me to validate the data, I'll need actual data, right? So I'll just go step by step. Step one over here should be get buffer data. Maybe wrong syntax. Get buffer data based on the key received in input. Okay, how can I do that? I'll just simply say read entities of setjf r travel. Okay, I'll just simply say in local mode, which entity I'm supposed to read. I'll just simply say I would like to read the travel data. Okay, and I would like to read all fields of it by corresponding input parameter I'll pass as a key. Okay, and while doing that, maybe I can also say that the result that I'm supposed to receive, I'm expecting the result to be in a LT travel data, for example. Okay, in case read also fail, which is very less likely because Fiori is having that data, it's triggering it based on that. But still, in case it fails, you can also receive some sort of a messages. I'll just simply say reported data, LT reported, and in case some failure happen, LT fail for the key parameter. This is something maybe we would have as a precautionary measure. And here is the place where I can receive the travel data. So the moment I click on this, I can expect that I can get all the travel data along with all its fields over here. Now, what I'm supposed to do? I'm supposed to validate the fields, right? So how we can perform the validation? I'll just simply say validate the data, saying I would like to loop at all the records, okay, because it's a table. So I'll just simply say loop at L3 travel data. Okay, I'll just simply say into data, ls travel data. Okay, and maybe I'll just simply say end loop. And within this loop, I might say validate my begin date. And I can also say validate my end date. And I can also say validate my description, for example. Okay, so I can say if my ls travel data dash begin data, okay, is initial, then I might be willing to perform something. Okay, what is that something? We'll talk about that. Okay, if my ls travel data end date is initial, I'm willing to perform something. Okay, and same goes over here. Okay, so now as I have entered all this validation, it seems similar, right? Like what we used to do in ABAP. We used to validate a field in a report. I used to say whether my field is let's just say initial or valid, whatever we would like to, and then maybe we used to throw some sort of a message by using a message statement. Here, we'll be throwing some message, but not by using a message statement. Okay. Instead, what we'll do is when I say that I have some sort of a field which is invalid. Okay. Now it could be anything, right? It can be a begin date, end date, or description. But as we are having one record, as you can see, per travel. So per travel ID, I have just single record. You are passing a key and you are in a single record, you are getting a travel. So it means in this particular case, how many times this loop will iterate? Only once, right? And during this iteration, it can figure out whether each of those fields has been entered or any of this field has having invalid data. So if any of this field is having invalid data, then I have to throw the error. So let me just also write this. if my ls travel data over here dash begin date is initial or ls travel data dash end date is initial or my ls travel data dash description is initial. Okay, so if any of this is initial, it means the data is faulty for sure. Now, what is faulty? That's something we can also go through. But first thing is data is faulty for sure. Okay, because the things that we are validating, at least one of them has got some issue. Okay, now if at least one of them has got some issue, what we are supposed to do? First, fill the key parameter of record which is not having right data into failed parameter. Okay, because as I mentioned, fail is supposed to contain what? It is supposed to contain the key parameter only of the record which is having some issue. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just simply say failed dash what all thing it has. It says whether there is some issue with the travel or booking. The moment your BO is increasing in size, it will show all the members of it. Okay, travel, booking, and likewise. So here I'll say my travel has got some issue. I'll just simply say value hash. So in this field, I am supposed to, I can say I have to pass the key parameter of the invalid record. So what is that invalid record and how can I identify it? So yesterday we mentioned, right, while also we were updating something, how can I uniquely identify a record? By using the percentage TKY, right? So here also I'll pass the same thing. So my record is identifiable by using a total key parameter. So I'll just simply say this ls travel data over here and the percentage TKY of it. I am saying that if either of the field is empty, it means there is something wrong. So I'll just mark that this particular field has got some issue. If I would have written this thing into this particular if clause, I would have ended up entering the same information 3 times, right? I would have ended up entering, let's just say, same information 3 times. So my field would have got 3 records. Here, as the primary key of it is going to be the same, I'll enter the record only once. So my field will only contain one item. Okay. Now, step 2. I'll say my begin date has got some issue. Okay. So I have to show, or I can say mention what is wrong with that, whether that's the initial or there is something that you're looking for which is not there, right? So whatever validation that you are performing, be it is initial or is not part of my master data or something, whatever you would like to look at it from your business requirement perspective, you will simply say that if your field, okay, um, begin date has not got some data, you will add a message in a field called reported. In your reported, you will say that reported has got some issue. The travel data of it is faulty. And why it is faulty, I can say what is wrong with that. So I'll just simply say I would like to add some record over here to mention what is wrong. And as we know that this reported travel over here, if I put a cursor, it's also of type table. So I have to add multiple records to it. So I'll just simply say, okay. And here I have to also uniquely give an identity saying which record I am giving this particular message for. So I'll just simply say percentage TKY. Okay, that's one. Another one is the message that we are talking about. You might also get something, for example, you see percentage message over here, right? So you will also pass the percentage message. I'll just simply say percentage message over here equal to, and here you are supposed to pass the name of the method. So each of this particular rep handler, or I can say rep structure, has got something using which you can pass the message. So there is a method called new messages. Okay, either new message or new message. Only if you are willing to just pass the data from text, you can also do that. Okay. Now what this should contain. Okay, so if I just say control space, you get all this thing. For example, it looks for some message ID, the class, right? So maybe we know there will be some sort of a message class. So for example, if I search for SY, which used to be a message class, okay, so I can see this, there is a message class for system messages. Okay, now if you want, you can also create your own message class and use that. But as we have this message class with 002, which is quite generic, it just says that you can pass any message you want. I'll just utilize this class psi and 002 as a message number. Okay, you can create your own message class also. So you'll pass the message ID over here. Okay, and post which I'll simply say my number over here. What is a message number? So I'll just simply say it's 002. Okay, and another one maybe we can pass is the parameter saying what's the issue. So I'll just say, hey, the start date over here is required, for example, right? And in what form I would like to give this message? Should I just show it as a error, warning, or just the information? We want that field to be there, right? Always. So I'll just simply say IF above behavior. So IF above behavior is a constant class. I could have said error for E, success for S, and likewise some hard-coded value. But how my wrap is going to interpret it depend totally on how the framework has been designed. That's the reason it always makes sense for you to go with a constant. So tomorrow, if underlying layer change the representation of it, then also you may not feel any issues. Okay. So I'll just say IF abab behavior. These ultimately the initials of the wrap behavior classes interfaces. There can be some standard interface for just behavior, standard interface for messages, standard interface for some testing environment. So I'll just say messages because I am working on messages. Now, what I'm supposed to do, I'm supposed to specify the severity of it, saying what is the kind of message it is. So I'll just simply say it's an error message. Now, as you can see, underlying it has got just E, but we are using constant as a best practices. Okay. So we just pass the message, number, and everything. Now, I can have one message, I can have 100 messages. How my system will know that the begin date that you are talking about, where it is, right? My end user may not have everything just by heart saying, okay, this is the place where I have that field. Second, I can have the same field at different layers as well. It really makes sense for me to highlight that field which is having an error. So what you will also have over here is if you just go here and check, there is something called percentage element. You will always have an element which will also be responsible, or I can say you can point that, okay, this particular set of data has got some issue. Okay, so I'll say begin date over here has got some invalid data. So I'll just simply go over here and I'll say that along with this message, where it should be bound to. So I'll just say this particular element over here has got some issue. And this element over here, I'll just simply say begin date over here. Now you are supposed to mark that like in BAPI or somewhere, right? We used to specify the extension structure and we used to specify, I can say data and data X. X means you are marking the flag saying, okay, this is the one which I'm talking about. This is the which I'm trying to read. I'm trying to update, right? Likewise, here the flags are marked, but not with X. Rather, there are some on and off. You will again go with some constant structure over here. Okay, I'll just say I have abab behavior. Okay, and you will simply say MK. Okay, mainly these are the constant for my percentage control and percentage element, as you can see. Okay, so I'll just go with MK, and here I'll specify whether I would like to highlight that. So as you can see, off it means it will not mark the field, and on it means it will mark that field, right? So I'll just go with on. So in case there is some error, this field should be highlighted. As simple as that. Okay. So we have got the validation for this one. Same way we have got the validation for, let's just say, end date. So I'll just simply pass this one. But here this time the field which I'll mark over here will be my end date. And here I won't say start date, rather in the message I'll change the message saying end date is required. Okay, same goes over here. I'll just simply say my description over here is mandatory. Okay, and here I'll simply say description is required. Okay, Now, as we are passing this, if you see, we are using a keyword called value hash. We are entering some data over here and reported which says that I am supposed to validate whether my begin date is there or not. After, for example, visualize a scenario saying begin date is not entered, but end date is also not entered. So as it's a value hash, first it will enter a message for start date. Later on, it will override that message with the end date because you are saying value hash, which internally clears out the internal table. Okay, so we have to keep the thing that has already been entered. So I'll just use the keyword called base. Right. So you will simply say base this one. This is normal ABAP on HANA structure syntaxes. It's like you are now doing an append rather than clear an append. Okay, I'll just add that field everywhere. Okay, so I have entered this field, and here is the place maybe I can expect that the messages will be accumulated. I'll just activate this. I guess there was some issue with the presenting. Let me just reshare it so that I
Sorry,
hope
Sumit, I
the
missed it. Sorry, what is the base for? I'm sorry, I missed it.
okay, just I'll reshare because there was some
Thank
click on the presenting, so I don't want the issue with the recording to happen. Okay, yeah. Okay, so uh, the value hash syntax. Do you know the value hash?
Yes, yes, Velvas I know. Yeah.
Okay, so what is the purpose of value hash? To populate any data on a table or a
Correct, correct.
structure which is on left
Yes,
hand
yes,
side, right?
yes, yes.
Now, how
Hmm.
does it work? So if I say I'm passing this one, okay, and
Hmm.
later on I'm passing another record, will
Hmm.
it append it on top of it, or it will just clear out the data that you have entered in the earlier stage and then enter it?
It clear out.
Ideally, exactly, yeah, it clears out the data, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, if I say I have validated this one and I have got some message over here, but
Hmm.
later on it tries to enter another message and then it clears out the validation message it has
Okay,
got
okay, okay.
for the start date. Now, in order for
Hmm.
me to persist it, I don't want that clearing to happen. So base is a keyword which restrict that clearing.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
And in normal case, that normal validation, like if I put a end date lesser than the start date, automatically handled, or you have to handle it in the validation itself?
You have to handle it because my system don't know what is begin date, what is end date. That's the terminology that you introduce, right?
Correct.
I can
Okay.
say
I mean,
begin travel, end travel,
hmm,
anything, right?
hmm.
So
Okay.
any validation that we are willing to do, be it
Okay.
as I mentioned, right? Be it
Hmm, hmm.
mandatory, optional, or contextual. The one which we are talking about is a contextual validation.
Contextual.
We
Yes,
are
yes, yes.
right. So those contextual validation we can validate. It's just a condition. I can simply
Hmm.
say I can simply validate that by putting one more condition over here saying
Hmm.
if my begin date and end date are in the right sequence. Okay, I'll just simply say if my begin date and end date over here. Okay, or maybe I'll just simply say begin date and okay, begin date is not initial and end date over here is also not initial and my begin date is greater than my end date, then I should throw an error. Right? So you can say begin date cannot be after end date. Begin date should be before end date. Okay, the moment you do that, your this validation will also work. Yeah, here the precondition is something that you might have to change because here is if I enter the description, it may not enter over here. So if it's for, I mean, if required, maybe what you're also supposed to do is you can just simply say, I would put this validation outside. So you can structure it as per what is your need. I'll just simply say if any of this is initial, definitely there is some error. Okay, or I'll just simply say okay. So I'll just simply say if either of them is initial or my begin date and these are there, but the begin date is after my end date, then in that case, the data is faulty. And here I'll just simply pass that message and I'll just change the message. Begin date should be before end date. Okay. And that's what you will simply say, and you can mark the field which you are willing to. Okay. So for example, it's not only one field, you can also mark multiple fields as well. Begin date, that's what we call it as. Oh, my bad. Okay, so this is how you can also add the contextual validation. But the idea is persist the old messages. These are quite required. Now let's see how it behaves onto the UI. I'll just simply, okay, let me just refresh this. Okay, I have got some data over here. Now I'll try to validate this. I'll just simply say this one. Oh, wow. Okay, let me just create this again to see what just happened. Okay, I'll just simply say create. Okay, so it's throwing some messages, but what did it say? It says your end date is required and description is required. It's holded me there and then, right? Now, if I say my end date is required over here, I might enter end date like this, and I'll just simply say this one. Okay, now it says description is required. It highlighted, and now it just going off. So I am getting some data, but at the same point in time, the mapping and everything is not working the way expected. If I just press enter, for example, over here, I can expect that this message is going to get mapped. Okay, so for example, if I just again go back and I'll try creating this again, rather than clicking on save, as I mentioned, there is some prepare call. Okay, the moment you press enter, so I'm pressing enter over here, and I get that message saying end date is required, and here I'm getting description is required. Okay, okay, I may. So this is how I'm getting the messages. At the same point in time, I can also say that I'm entering some messages saying dummy. I'll press enter. As you can see, the message still not got vanished. Okay, instead it is just bound to that field. I am not able to get rid of that. Okay, so these messages which are there, which are available on individual fields. Okay, so for example, if I just simply say my end date over here is 16th. Okay, and at the same point in time, if I try pressing an enter, it says description is required, and it says begin date should be before end date, begin date should be before end date. I'm getting these messages, but at the same point in time, if I have an error message on hundred of field, and I would like to read those messages and navigate through them easily, rather than scrolling through whole application just to figure out a one red sign, it would be quite difficult for the user. Okay, so those messages should be bound. Plus, once I correct the data, right? So for example, I'm now correcting the data saying 31st. I'm pressing enter again, but still these messages are not going away. So these messages which you see over here, which may be get which might get cleared not on case of an enter, but only in case of a save, are ideally called transient messages. So RAP suggests supports two kind of messages: transient messages, or you might also hear it as a non-state messages. Purpose of this messages is that if you are willing to get rid of some messages only in click of a save, then you can go with that. So for example, if I say saying I have got some error, I'll just simply say I'm entering this sample, but at the same point in time, the moment I click on create, it will say that end date is invalid, and I'll just got rid of the error message, whatever I have. Okay. So the highlighting and everything is going to get cleared out. It means they are not persisted anywhere. That's the reason they are called transient. At the same point in time, there can be one more messages which you will see being used quite vastly within RAP. It's called state messages. Now, purpose of the state message is to persist the state of the individual field and the state of the application. Now, how that's being done? Maybe what you can do is you can just simply go ahead and add a state area. Okay. So for example, I'll just simply say I would like to add a state area over here in the reported late. Now, what can be a state area? State area can be anything, can be any random string, any random identifier you can come up with your own. The only catch is that this state area should logically group the validation. So for example, here I am validating a field. For example, I am entering a percentage state area and here I am saying validate begin date. So my purpose of this state area is to validate the begin date. So it will going forward contain all the messages over here within this group. I can say which are relevant to begin date within this state area. I can have another state area, for example, which I am willing to use for validating end date. Okay. The same point in time, maybe here I would like to validate the date range. And here I would like to validate the description. Okay, so this is how I ideally call it as a state. Now, how this will change the behavior? Let's just look at it maybe in action. I'll just activate this. I just added 4 random string. I'm saying anything which is relevant to begin date. If I let's just say enter any validation, bring it into begin date, and I would like to use the same state area, I can use that. Okay, or I can create an individual one as well. I'll just go back, discard this, and see the change in the behavior. I'll just refresh my app. I'll click on create. I see that I don't have any messages yet. I'll press an enter. You see, now I have got the 2 messages, but at the same point in time on the left hand side bar, I also get a count saying 2 messages are there. So at the end of the day, my user would like to ensure that all the validations has been taken care of. He can ensure that here I should not see any messages. Plus, if I click on this, the moment you click on this description is required, your cursor will be navigated over there. Even if you are not in the scope of that, I'll just click on this and you see your screen will navigate you over there. Okay, so user can easily click on this messages and go on to the relevant field which has got some invalid data. That's one. Okay, another one is if I just simple say that I would like to have some description, so I'll just enter a dummy. Now here see the magic. I'll just press enter. Now you see there is something that just happened. I press enter. Now the messages are 3. Ideally, it should be 1, right? If I click on this, it says end date is not required twice. Description is required is only 1. But ideally, this should be 0 and this should only be 1. It means each time it is trying to add new messages on top of whatever was entered. It's not clearing out old data. It's not clearing out old state. That's the reason it is called state messages. It persists the state of the messages till the time it has not been cleared out explicitly within the session. So this state has been considered, or I can say persisted by the means of the state area. So what you are supposed to do is each time you start with a new validation, you have to ensure that you are clearing out the old messages. You are clearing out the old state messages. How can I do that? Clear old state messages. How can I do that? Okay. All you can do is, for example, where can I enter the messages in my reported, right? So I'll just copy this, for example, for our easy reference. Okay. Now, while you are doing that, you just need 2 identity. First, primary key and state area. You don't need anything else. So clear in an let's just say terminology wise is not a clear keyword. Rather, it's entering a state area line with empty message. if you enter any state area line in a reported with an empty message before actual message has been entered, system will clear the old messages for that. That's what the system will do. So I've entered it for one. I can enter it for another, and I can enter it for another, and I can enter it for another. Yeah, base is something which I'll only enter at the top only at once, not more than that. So these begin date, I might also need some state area for end date. So what I'm saying is that each time for any of the travel data, if I have got 50, if you are trying to validate it, if you are trying to revalidate it, please ensure you are clearing out the old messages over here. So I'll just enter begin date, end date, maybe the date range over here. You might see it as a bit of additional work, but if you see the advantage of it, right, the behavior that it gives, it's quite good compared to the transient messages. So I'll just enter all these messages, and now you see that this particular message, what you are if you visualize what you are doing is in your travel table, there are empty lines without any message for this one, which internally will clear out the old buffered messages and then add new messages on top of it. If you would have entered this line before, the clear system would have cleared the message, even this message would have got cleared out. Okay, so I'll just activate this and see how it behaves. Okay, now I'll just go over here in my application. Okay, discard this. Okay, let me just refresh this app. Okay, and I'll just click on create. Okay, and I'll just simply press enter. I got two messages, right? I'll just simply say, hey, I would like to add some dummy description. Press enter again. You see this message is now gone. I'll just get one message over here, correct? At the same point in time, if I directly jump onto here and click on create, you get the message rightly bind on the field. Like in the transient message, you are getting it into the pop-up. So visually as well, it feels really good. And maybe for the user as well, it's quite easy for them to use. Okay, so for example, let me just say 24th. I got another message. Yeah, it's a single message ultimately bound to a field, because navigation can only be linked to a field, but the moment you put a cursor, it will ultimately give you the same message. But yeah, navigation will always be bound to a single field. That's how it works. So you can just simply correct this and maybe try entering some data, for example, 234, and I'll just enter this 10, 10, and maybe INR. And now if I just enter this, you can see the messages are not there, and I'll create and my record will get created. It's not only in create, I think we have also written the message in update. So if I just simply go over here, remove and enter, I can get the same message. And here, even in the edit, I cannot get rid of that particular message. I have to enter some description for sure. Okay, now this how a validation can be done and what are the kind of validation, what are the type of messages. And what you are supposed to do is define a validation and write it in the preparation as well. So not only in case of a save, but the moment my users say, hey, I'm in the preparation of data and he press enter, then also these messages are being triggered. Okay, anyone has any doubts on this? No? Yes? Okay, seems all good. Okay, this uh, build the story of my header validation. How about the item? Is there anything different I'm supposed to do for that? Not really, right? Let's just take a small instance for that as well. So for example, I would like to validate my some sort of a booking data, like we entered, like we validated the mandatory field for my, um, let's just say header. I can also decide to validate some mandatory field for my child item as well. For example, if I just go over here and I'll say I'm going into edit and I'm creating a record over here. I have got, let's just say, booking date. So I want to ensure that my booking date is entered. No one should keep it blank while let's just say booking has been created. Okay, so how can I ensure that the data on the child record is quite valid? No differences. That's the same thing, maybe what you will follow. Okay, but the only difference, the minor thing will be the place at which you will define the validation. Okay, so here I have a update delete. There is a child node. So if I would like to validate something on header, I'll do it on the header. If I'm willing to do that on the item, I'll do it onto the item. I'll just simply mark that field as a mandatory. For example, I'll just simply say field mandatory over here. And what I'll do is I would like to make my booking data as mandatory. So my bad, booking date. Okay, and I would like to add some sort of a validation. Now the sequence also does not matter. Okay, I am just writing that, so it's well structured, but you can also have the validation written on top and everything else. That's also fine. System is going to execute whenever the time comes. Okay, so I'll just simply say validation, validate mandatory field. Okay, and I would also use this on save of a create and update. Yeah, now the name can be different. I can have any name I want. I'll just say control+1. I'll just get this method created. And I can see that system created a method. Maybe we named it a bit similar, right? It's same mostly for header and item. I just named it same, but you can have it different as well. I'll just simply say activate. Now, if I just recheck, you see, I'll put a cursor on this. It says again, this is not part of prepare. Do I have any prepare method in my booking? Not really, right? But if I would like to still get this validated, prepare is defined only onto the header layer. What you are supposed to do is you are supposed to specify it like validation. Okay, and booking. Maybe it's not suggesting the value help. I'll just simply say booking. Okay, and here maybe I'll just specify the validation, this one. So we'll simply say that during the prepare as well, I would like this to get executed. Now you see I don't have any warnings. Okay, I'll just activate this. Okay, and now simple thing like what we did in the earlier one, I'll just simply try to read the data. Read the data. I'll just simply say read entities of ZJF R travel in local mode. Entity, I can say what it is, booking this time. Okay, and maybe I would really read the all fields with corresponding maybe key, and maybe we'll just simply also read the result saying LT bookings. Okay, and here what we'll specify is we'll just check the mandatory parameters. Check the mandatory. Okay, so I'll just simply say in order for me to check the mandatory parameter, in order for me to go with a state messages, for example, I'll just simply say loop at LT bookings into data LS bookings. Okay, and as we are going with the state messages, first step will be, let me just put this message outside. Okay, so how can I clear a state messages? Like the way we did earlier, but this time it's for booking. So I'll just simply say reported booking over here, and I'll just simply add a value hash over here. Okay, and here maybe I'll just simply add the key parameter of it. So for example, I'll just simply say TKY over here, and I'll just simply say ls booking. Okay, and maybe the state area, because we are going with the state messages, I'll just say validate booking date. Okay, and now we'll validate. I'll just simply say that if my ls booking dash booking date is initial. Okay, then I have to add a fail parameter over here. I'll just simply say fail dash booking, and here I'll just simply add a fail parameter. What is the data that should be failed over here? The one which is identified by the key parameter, definitely. So I'll just simply say percentage TKY equal to ls booking percentage TKY. Okay, now other one is we are supposed to pass some messages, right? So we'll just add the reported. I'll just say ls booking. Sorry, my bad. I'll just say reported and bookings, and I'll add the message over here, ensuring that everything is persisted. Whatever was there earlier, I'll just simply say base of reported booking. Okay, and I'll add a new message over here with the same state area. So let me just copy these 2 lines from here. Okay, and what are we supposed to add over here? So let me just what are we supposed to add? A message. So I'll just simply say percentage message. We just keep this into a bit of a center. Okay, and I'll just simply say new message. Okay, and what are we supposed to add over here? The same messages, whichever is relevant to this. So I'll just simply say ID equal to SY. For example, number. Okay, over here 002, and maybe V1, for example, and I'll just simply say booking date is mandatory. Okay, and maybe how we would like to show the error. So I'll just say as an error message. Maybe we have message, right? There is the one. Okay, where I'm. Okay, yeah, here. Okay, I'll just go with error over here. And maybe then I'll just simply say the field which I'm supposed to highlight. So I'll just simply say element over here. Which element I'll highlight? I'll just simply say booking date. So I'll just simply say if abap behavior mk on. And here comes the important thing. So on a child, what we did is we might have more than one item. First, we are saying this reported. First thing that we missed over here is a base. We should be adding that as well, so that old messages are persisted. At the same point in time, each item will have its own set of key. We should also persist this. So I should also write a base over here. So the old records are persisted. Here we have anyway added it. We have got all the things, but one thing which may be something which we may not have entered over here is if I say a booking is displayed on a page. Okay, booking is displayed on a page over here whose key binding, if you see in the URL, it's done on the travel ID. So there is a whole page as a part of which I can have n number of bookings. Okay, so if I am supposed to validate a booking, ideally that particular booking should also specify that which parent, which travel it is part of. That's the reason on the child level node, you will also specify one thing called percentage path. Okay, in the percentage, if you see percentage P path, and here in the path, you will specify the path of the parent to it. Whatever is the immediate parent, you will specify the path of it. I'll just simply say percentage TKY, and here you will specify the key of it. So I'll just simply say corresponding of this, for example, LS booking, okay, and maybe the percentage TKY of it. I have to specify this particular path so my parent is identified correctly. Otherwise, the mapping won't happen to the field. Okay, I'll just activate this. Okay, what did just happen? Okay, let me just go in the old view and the problems, which is over here. It says one error. What it is? No component exists with name this one. Okay, maybe we just had a random character entered because of some typo. Maybe it should be a where, right? That's what we have written earlier. Okay, now I'll just activate this. Okay, seems good. Now let's just go back and refresh. Okay, and now what we'll do is we'll just try to click on create. Okay, and now when we say we are trying to click on create, we might have to validate the things. I'll just simply say create over here. Go back. Let's see what all things I have. I'll just press enter. It says that this thing should be there, this thing should be there. Plus, as you can see, this field is also highlighted. It says booking date is mandatory, and I can see that this field is also highlighted over here. If I just enter this field, maybe this will get resolved, and I'll just press enter. Now you see this data seems to be fine. So likewise, I can have validation written on any number of nodes. All you have to ensure is if you are willing to have the validation getting triggered on press of enter, add it into the prepare method of it. If you are not willing to do that, you can avoid it. Then the validation will get triggered. Only the default option which is there, which is on save, not before that. Okay. So this is how validation ideally works and how the binding is being done and how the transient and state messages works. Anyone has any doubts, any queries so far? No? Yes? Seems we all are good. Okay, perfect. Thanks. And okay, now what we might look at it. Okay, so maybe what we might um, okay, let's see. Okay, now let's see. We would like to do some sort of logic writing to understand some sort of additional logic, okay, which we might end up generating. I'll just go over here and say that what we have done till now. We have done early numbering using which a number gets generated. We have added certain stuff and using which my application is working perfectly fine. And we also learned determination and validation. Numbering concept when it comes, we have learned early numbering. Let's just also try to tick mark so-called late numbering. Okay, now what it is? Okay, what is a late numbering and how does it come into picture? Okay, so what happens is when you are saying that my number of a document should not be generated beforehand, okay, rather it should only get generated whenever whole data is prepared. So which is called quite late into the stage, then ideally you would go with so-called late numbering. Okay, now what does it mean? That if, for example, I'll say that I go over here and I'll just simply say 4142 is created, I'll just discard this. The moment I create a new record, my number gets generated. What if By the time this is open and someone tries creating a new record, it will assign it 4143 and they'll maybe save that record as well. Post which, if someone discard this one, 4142, there are pretty good chances that the number range might have some gaps. Okay. That's the reason you might also see that many a time, even though you do have a soft delete where the numbers won't get left, but there are some gaps that you will see in between. One has a five after coming after it, six is missing, likewise. Many a time in business document, you might need that as much as possible, maybe not always, but as much as possible, you might need to have a continuity in the number, in the business document number that has been generated. And that's only possible if you only generate a number while a user is trying to save the record rather than doing those upfront. Okay. That's where what we'll do is the number assignment that we are doing, we won't do it using early numbering, rather we'll do it using a late numbering. Okay. So what are the things those are going to get changed and how those things will look alike? That's something we maybe we'll see. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll just first try to ensure that, okay, I don't have any short of a draft over here. Okay, I just deleted a record. I don't have anything else mostly available. My own draft. Do I have any drafts available? Yeah, I have this. I'll try to get rid of this draft as well. Okay, I don't have this draft as well. I'll just go over here and click on OK. So what I'm interested in doing is, I'm just interested in going with a late numbering. So let's see what are the things those might get changed. Here you see I have got written a keyword called early numbering. Now, in order for me to go with a late numbering, what I'll do is I'll just simply go over here and I'll just comment this out, and rather introduce a keyword called late numbering. Now, let's see what all things we do have. As we define a late numbering, the first error that you are getting is as the parent has been tagged with a late numbering, the booking has to be tagged with late numbering as well, because the parent of it is a late numbering. So the complete key is determined only during the late save time. Now, if you visualize or compare it with the early numbering, even though we marked early numbering over here at the one point in time, I was not forced to do the same for the booking node. So in case of early numbering, you can choose whether you would like to have some early numbering implemented for this one, or you are fine with that. You are fine even without it having. But if you go with a late numbering, the child node of it is mandatory to have a late numbering only. You cannot go with early numbering over there. So what I am supposed to do is, or what I am forced to do is, I have to go over here and specify late numbering here as well. As simple as that. Okay. Now, the moment you do that, you see there are certain warnings or errors that those are coming up. It says that the travel table, which is a draft table over here, should be adjusted. Why is that the case? Because if I just go over here, we have written a statement that during early numbering, during the initial record creation, before even it appears onto the UI, a number has been assigned. But whereas in case of a late numbering, during the click of a save button, the final number will be assigned. But by that time, in order for my system to persist that, a temporary unique number will be assigned to the record. Okay, till the actual number is not being generated. What is that temporary unique number? So if I just go over here, you see it's giving me an error saying must have a field called draft UUID. So this draft UUID is an internal unique number which system will assign to it before you assign a real number to it. That's why it is called a late numbering, and this is a unique number which I am talking about, which I was talking about. I'll just click on this and I'll just simply say, yeah, adjust the table. You see, recreate. I am not supposed to do anything. My system will do that for me. Okay, so it just added one more thing into primary key. You see, travel ID is there, but at the same point in time, it added a draft UUID. Now, this draft UUID over here is going to be there in case I have a record created into a draft mode. So till the time I don't have a record assigned, till the time my record does not have a travel ID assigned, each time this unique ID is going to be unique. Hence, I can have more than one draft also available. I'll just simply say save and I'll activate this table. And I'll go over here and do a syntax check again. You see, there is one more error on this. It says that first, there should be a draft UUID for this one as well. At the same point in time, parent draft UUID should also be there, so it knows what is the identity of my parent. Okay, so I'll just say, let's just say recreate this one. Okay, and you see, I have got two fields added. One, a draft UUID which uniquely identify my booking record, plus parent draft UUID which also says that what is that particular parent record which it is part of. Okay, just save this, activate this, go over here, do a syntax check, and let's just go in this class, do a syntax check here, and I am getting some error over here. Why is that the case? Okay, maybe I'll just simply, and the problem statement says the create is not activated. The operation create is not activated for this. Maybe it's not saying that. What does it say is that the numbering, early numbering that you are trying to implement is not requested by your behavior. So what we are supposed to do is we are supposed to comment these two methods out. We cannot have it because early numbering has been removed now. So I'll just go over here and comment this out as well. Okay, so I'll activate this, go over here, and let's just do a syntax check again here. I don't have an error, but rather I have a warning. It says that whenever you are having a late numbering, a method adjust number should be implemented in your save sequence. It means during your record is being saved, there should be a method called adjust number, which may be there already in the definition. We have to redefine it. And during that particular point in time, we have to assign a new number. Okay, so I'll just click on this and maybe I'll try to create a method for this one. Okay, add the required method, adjust numbers. So you see, it just got created in a class LSC. LSC as in the save sequence. This is the class, and here this adjust number has been redefined. I'll just try to activate both of them. Okay, so this particular late numbering you see over here now will be used in order for my number generation. So let's see by that time how my system is going to behave. So I will be using this method, and how that works. Put the cursor on this, look at the ABAP element info. It says that you can map the record over here. Okay, you can map the record over here with the right set of data. Okay, and the moment you map that, then only your record will have a new numbers assigned to it. So by that time, let's see how the system behaves. I'll just go over here. I have now changed the numbering concepts. So I'll try to refresh this app first. And I'll try to create this. You see, I don't have a numbers assigned to that, but still I have got a, let's just say, a page loaded over here. I'll go over here and I'll say the URLs. It says that travel ID's key parameter has changed. It has got a travel, it has got a number, and it has got a draft UUID. So this combination might be unique, right? Let me just also go over here and maybe try to open another preview, or maybe let's just do this in order for us to have the thing simple. I'll just duplicate this tab. I'll try to create over here something, and I'll try to create another draft over here. And as you can see, in the early numbering case, I was not able to, I can say without a numbering case, I was not able to create two drafts at the same point in time. Whereas if I just go right now, I am expecting to see two drafts, ZJFD travel, ZJFD travel is the one. You see, my table has now got two records created, okay, and each of them has got some unique ID over here. And that's the reason two, or I can say multiple draft can coexist over here. Because my number has not been generated, system has assigned a number by itself. And this is the one that is taking care of the key parameter. That's the reason this record is now behaving as a unique record over here. Okay, now what we are supposed to do? We are supposed to ultimately let's just say ensure that each the time I say I am willing to create a record, my number should be assigned. I just discarded one, so definitely I can expect one less record over here. But the moment I say I'm clicking on save, I'm expecting some sort of a let's just say call over here which says that uh, please assign a number. My record is now ready to be persisted. Okay, let's see how my adjust number is getting the call. I'll just put a breakpoint over here, activate this breakpoints, and now let's just say I'm trying to work on my set of data. I'll just simply say end date over here, maybe 30, and maybe I'll just enter an agency ID as well. My draft is being updated, and as you can see, I just got the debugger immediately. So it's not during the final save, right? Even at the time when I'm trying to check whether something or other thing are working, I'm getting a particular call over here. Let's just see the parameters in the locals, in the map parameter over here in travel, I don't have anything as such, right? So this seems to be fine. I'll just execute this now first. Okay, and maybe I'll try to enter some description as well. For example, XYZ. Okay, and maybe I'll just add some status as well. And maybe I'll try to maybe let's just say wait for a moment till the time draft gets updated. Okay, so here I also see that map travel does not have got anything. Okay, I'll just simply go over here and I'll try to click on this create. Okay, now as you can see, the moment I try clicking on create, my travel has got some record. What does it have? It has got the GUID, it has got some temporary ID over here, and it has got a travel ID over here. So there is a field which it is trying to look for sure, right? One way or another, it is trying to. And maybe if I just go over here, what is the field that I mean, what is the number that I do have available till now? I'll say I have, let's just say 4141. So let me just try to update this with 4142. I am trying to pass the record into debugging. I'm just updating this record in debugging. I'll just execute this. Okay, and I'll just go over here and you see this 4142 just got assigned over here again, right? I'll just try to edit this time again. So we found that in the creation mode, somehow I'm getting the control, and here in the map again, the moment I'm in to edit, I don't have anything. I'll go back and execute this. I'm trying to change this to 2345, for example. I got the control again over here. Do I have anything over here? Not really. Right, it's empty. I'll execute. And I'll try to save the record again. Okay, and now as well as you can see in the adjust number, have I got anything? Not really, right? So only at the time when you are trying to when you are working on a save and you have got something which does not have a number assigned to it, you are getting the control in your adjust number, and you are getting item created into that. Other than that, whenever an item, whenever let's just say call is something that's getting triggered on that, the map is not having any numbers, or map does not have any record. So what does it say? That in case I am willing to perform any sort of an operation like create update, and I also want to ensure that the right number is being assigned, all I can just bet on is the number existence, or I can say records existence in my map. Okay, so what I can simply do is, if my map over here, if my map over here, my bad, travel is not initial, if my map travel is not initial, and I would like to get a new number assigned to that, then simply I can go ahead and get the new travel ID. And the moment I get the new travel ID, I can simply go ahead and add it to the travel whichever is being created. So for example, we had some query return to get the maximum travel ID somewhere. Let's just get it from there. So I'll just simply say get maximum number here. Let me just copy this. Okay. So I'll just simply say I am trying to get the maximum travel ID. So I got a maximum travel ID over here. Now for each of the record where travel ID is initial, we have to update. So I'll just say update travel ID. So I'll just say loop at maybe map travel. Okay, and I'll just simply say assigning field symbol because we are supposed to update it, right? So I'll just simply say LFS travel data and loop. From a precautionary measure, which ideally is not going to happen, but still from a precautionary measure perspective, let's just say simply where travel ID is initial. So it will only try to assign the travel ID if it does not exist. If it's there, system should not uh, temper it. And each time you are supposed to increment and assign a new ID. So for example, if there are more than one record, more than one travel into creation, so each of the travel should have got a unique ID. So I'll just say increment the travel ID over here. My bad. What is a variable? It is over here plus equal to 1. And then I'll assign it. Assign the travel ID over here. LFS travel. I'll just simply say travel ID over here is meant to be this maximum travel ID. And if I do that, my expectation will be that this particular travel ID will be assigned over here. I'll just activate this. And now if I just simply go over here and let's just observe the thing. Okay, so what do I have over here? Nothing. So do I have I got anything in this? Not really. But if I just go over here and try creating a new record. So for example, I'll just simply go over here rather. Try to click on create. I have got something. Definitely the things those are working will continue working. I'll just press enter as well. You will see validation and everything are working irrespective of whether I'm going with early numbering or late numbering. My system does not have anything to do with that. Okay, I'll just simply say 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5. I'll just say today, tomorrow. I'll revalidate the data as well. Enter. Okay, so it just also resolve the inconsistency. I'll just simply say this one. And maybe, for example, I'll just say sample, enter, and I'll just click on trigger save. System determine a new number and assigned it to it 4143. Yeah, I had a 4142, right? So that's the reason system assigned a new number called 4143 over here. Next time, okay, if I just get into an edit mode over here and refresh my draft table, you see as the number has been generated, draft is not getting generated. If number is not there, then only a draft will get generated. This ultimately gives you an idea whether a particular record that you're working on is already available onto DB or that's just into creation. Okay, so that's how ideally a draft parameter works. One more thing, maybe if we can just look at the validation that we just worked on, right? So I'll just click on validate mandatory. Maybe there is a booking. Let's just go into header, which is over here. Set initial value, auto populate, validate, right? Over here, put a cursor. Let's see what it has. It has got a key parameter. At this point in time, the percentage TKY and everything that we are using, right? As you can see, the key parameter used to be what? Is draft, percentage PID, travel ID. So this PID just got introduced, which was not there in case of early numbering. In case of late numbering, this PID just started appearing, which is called preliminary ID, which is nothing but your draft ID, which you are seeing on your draft table. Okay. And that's the reason we are always using percentage TKY. Okay. If I would have assigned is draft and travel ID separately, I would have felt that my validation and everything just stopped working. Rather, if I just go in percentage TKY, this PID just also became part of it. Okay. So that's the beauty of component groups. Even if any of the wrap terminology change, these groups are going to be there, and these groups will contain the right set of combination of a key parameter it might need in order for certain operations. Okay, so this PID is nothing but a draft ID that you can expect to be there whenever, or I can say till the time I don't have a persisted, or I can say a final semantic ID generated. That's the I can say way, that's the behavior of it. So ultimately, we are not only passing the let's just say travel ID, but rather till the time I don't have a travel ID, you are passing a PID, and that's the reason system knows okay what to map with what. Okay. Anyone has any doubts, any questions? No. No. Yes. Clear. Not clear. Okay. Seems we all are good. Okay. Yeah. Maybe I guess. I know these are there are too many things maybe we covered validation and maybe this one. Now next thing that maybe we'll go with managed scenario is actions and function. That's what we'll start looking into, and post which we'll move towards the unmanaged scenario as well to see okay how the uh, unmanaged scenario works, or maybe we can also try to consider action and function in unmanaged itself to also see both the flavors. Then few more things which are left over here is called, let's just say, manage with unmanaged save and additional save. That's also we'll see after we learn unmanaged scenario. Okay, so we'll keep today's session short if you don't have any doubt, and maybe I'll just request all of you to just try to give it a try, so you are also comfortable, and in case you have any doubt we can cover that later on. Okay, are we all good?
Sumit, regarding a non-state messages.
Yeah, transient
Uh,
messages, non-state. Yeah, okay.
yeah. So regarding non-state messages, will syntaxes will all be the same. I mean,
Exactly. Everything will be same. Just two
we don't
things
need a
will
state
differ
area
is,
there.
yeah, exactly. You don't need a state area here and you don't need a clearing over here. If you have a
Okay.
state messages, you have to clear it out because it's there
Okay.
persisted in the state of an application. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
That's the only
Okay.
idea. But most of the time you will see people are using state messages in
Hmm.
case you are going with, let's just say, any of the field level validation. Whenever you are going with some sort of actions, for example, let me just give you
Hmm.
an idea saying you are trying to uh, when we have not implemented a custom actions over here, but for example, if I'm trying to implement, let's just say uh,
A post maybe. Yeah.
a post, or let's just say approve, or let's just say mark this status, mark travel as obsolete, anything. But
Okay.
in as a part of that action as well, I have to do some sort of a pre-check saying I cannot mark all the travel to obsolete. Rather, there should be some condition whether it should have been lapsed or some sort of approval is required, or any number of things. So in that case, what you are willing to do is the moment I click on action, that during the execution of it, nothing should be performed, but user should get a message saying, hey, you cannot do this action for so and so reason. Now, in that case, I cannot bind those things on a button because it does not visually look good, and the moment action is performed, that should also not persist. Okay, that's the reason you can go with a transient message in such a case. So
Hmm.
depending on whether you are going to bind it somewhere, you can choose whether that will be a state right candidate for a state or a non-state messages. Okay.
And regarding the message box we do in UI5, so is there any provision when the message box comes up like that? Like right now we are showing a sort of a status bar message, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Do you know?
So
I mean, do you have a provision of message box or something like that?
You can do
Understood.
that. So those are totally UI driven. So look, this is a
Okay.
Fury element which ultimately
Correct.
defines the message, which are generic, and maybe we use message containers over here. That's how ideally
Okay.
Fury element binds those
Correct.
messages. But
Hmm.
when it comes to your freestyle, what you can do is, if I say I'm trying to trigger a post call or any of the call where which is giving me some message, right? You can expect that in
Hmm.
your, let's just say, on merge or update after the promise has been resolved, you will get in the response the messages. Then in the
Correct.
freestyle, you have a liberty, whichever kind of control you would like to bind it onto.
Those are all
Fury
UI
element.
controls. Correct. Hmm.
Exactly, yeah. So you can,
Yeah.
as there is no rule saying your determination message or this message should only be bound in a message container. You can use any controls you want, but Fury element is using message container internally. Now, if you would like to bind it in a different way in your freestyle, definitely these calls are not going to get triggered automatically. Rather, the moment you call prepare, you are going to get some response. That response will have some messages. Then you will choose whether I would like to bind it or show it, or in what form I would like to show it. So that's totally a responsibility of a UI developer. They can project it the way they want, right?
Got it, Sumit. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, yeah, then thanks then. Maybe thanks everyone for joining. We'll keep it short. We'll give you back your last few minutes and maybe have a nice rest of the weekend. We'll see each other in the on next Saturday then.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.